Pranams to revered Secretary Maharaj Ji, and we begin the sessions with that pranam of Vivekananda Science Circle. We also welcome the speaker, whom I will introduce later on, and all members of the distinguished audience. Today's lecture by an eminent speaker is dedicated to the loving memory of Shantanu Sengupta, an ardent devotee of Sri Ramakrishna Dev and Swami Vivekananda. But he departed our world at a very young age. I will first provide some details of Shantanu Sengupta to the audience before introducing the speaker. Now, both born in Srimot. Wait. একটু নিচে ঠিক আছে Born to Srimati Tapati and Dr. Ramaprasad Sengupta on 1st June 1963, Master Shantanu Sengupta and his early educations at Newcastle Great Britain, and was then admitted into the medical school at the Newcastle University for MBBS degree. While a promising second-year student, he left us on the 9th March 1983. He's only 30 years old, I think, or 20 years old. And deeply loved by his teachers and classmates alike for his pleasant manners and kindness to others, his school authorities dedicated the library to his memory in recognition of his loving associations with it. By nature religious, the beloved Shantanu became a devotee of Sri Ramakrishna and Swami Vivekananda early in his life. He carried a photograph of Sri Ramakrishna and a little book, My Master, by Swami Vivekananda in his pocket. He never told a lie, even if it meant escaping some trouble. In spite of his very short life, he gave much joy to his family and everyone around him. This memorial lecture, arranged under Master Shantanu Sengupta's endowment, was instituted by Dr. R.P. Sengupta, an eminent neurosurgeon of UK, and Institute of Neuroscience in India. And he dedicated, this endowment was instituted by this father, Dr. R.P. Sengupta, in memory of his son. We celebrate not only his sacred life, but also the inspirations that he infused in his parents, which created his legacy for serving people with neurological problems, portraying Vivekananda's motto of to serve, to worship. Today, Shantanu Sengupta Memorial Lecture in English will be delivered by Dr. Anindo Nyogi Balslev, founding member of ISSR. I will now give a short descriptions of the speaker, and today's speaker, Professor Anindita N. Balslev, is an eminent author and speaker in international forums. So just for first, let me tell her qualifications, which you saw in the posters anyway. But she got her master's from Calcutta University and PhD from University of Paris in philosophy. She is the founder of a forum named Cross-Cultural Conversation, CCC, and organizer of several international conferences. The title of a talk, Why is the Interfaith Movement Crucial in Our Time? A topic that is of great relevance and importance for our present world and civilizations. Now, just let me tell a few words about her. There are a lot of things that we can talk about, but her internationally, he presented some important conferences. She was the invited speakers. For examples, I will give 2 examples only. And one is that she was invited speaker in Delhi in 2013 in the conference which is celebrating the 150th birthday of Swami Vivekananda. And that was the topic of her lecture at that time was on world religion, diversity, not dissension. And the second one that I would quote is in Chicago, given in Chicago earlier this year, and again invited talk. And the title of that particular talk was World Religions, Diversity, not this, that's in Delhi, sorry. And this one was yes, Parliament of Religions, in a conference on Parliament of Religions. So these are the 2 just important ones, but there are many other international conferences where she participated as invited speakers. So with that short introductions, I will ask you to please come here and give your...
Cross-cultural conversation, a new way of learning. Published by?
Routledge, 2020.
Routledge.
Yeah.
Taylor and Francis Group.
They have sent about 15 copies and those books.
You can buy the book from the counter there.
মনে যাচ্ছে না ঠিক আছে বলে Namaskar. Let me first of all thank Swami Shupananandaji for his very generous invitation to share my thoughts on the question of why is interfaith movement crucially needed in our time. I would also like to thank Sri Shamal Lahiri for his kind introduction. As a background for today's discussion, I would like to tell you discuss a few significant characteristic features of our time so that we get to appreciate why this question has come up again in a very big way. Globally speaking, we are living in an era politically when we find that we are all living in a nation-state system of governance. This is the system which is now preponderant worldwide. And we find that most of these nation-states, and as you may already know, there are about 200 nation-states already registered with the United Nations, strictly speaking 195. And these nation-states, irrespective of their cultural differences, they all seem to be having a common aspiration of partaking as well as investing in advanced scientific technology, according, of course, to their respective capacities. So we have a very unequal world in that sense. Among many other things, this worldwide endeavor has facilitated transport of goods, travel in persons, and communication of ideas from one end of the world to another in an unprecedented manner. What is, however, noteworthy that while we are getting increasingly more and more interconnected and interdependent, we are also becoming poignantly aware of certain gaps in the cultural spheres of our lives, which today really call for immediate attention. A review of ongoing conflicts and skirmishes around the globe at present often discloses our inability to tackle adequately our multiple social identities. As we all know, there are many criteria that are employed for construing various forms of collective identities. We divide and subdivide humanity into various groups and subgroups, such as along the line of race, religion, gender, ethnicity, class, caste, nationality, and more. It seems to me that nowadays the most disastrous forms of violence that we are seeing take place in the name of national and religious identities. Today, our focus is on the issue of religious identity in the context of religious diversity, which poses a huge challenge for any multi-religious society. Hence, the interfaith movement certainly merits priority in the list of concerns that now must be publicly addressed in an open conversational setting if we are all to stay safe and sane. This is an intricate subject matter and surely not a job for one single individual or for one single religious community. It calls for collaboration of spokespersons with a multidisciplinary background and adherents of various religious communities. A few events that have taken place in partnership with my forum, CCC, so far, have shown me that without sincere effort and a readiness to engage in many rounds of discussions, it is well nigh impossible to obtain greater clarity in this regard. Now, what is CCC? Let me here share with you a bit of my own personal journey. My life experience and involvement with cross-cultural studies over the years prompted me to create this forum, CCC. CCC is an abbreviation for cross-cultural conversation, and it is intended to be used as an umbrella term. In other words, CCC is not meant to designate exclusively a conversation between East and West or between North and South with special connotations. The forum invites exchanges among diverse cultural groups and subgroups located in the center and periphery of any national scenario on issues that are of collective concern. There are many aspects of CCC as an undertaking that need to be grasped for appreciating the full intent of this project, but I cannot go into the details here today since this is not the central theme that we are going to discuss. Let me only mention briefly that the aspiration that drives the forum CCC lies in the search for a new direction in the dynamics of the self and the other. History shows that real socio-cultural transformations seldom happens only through top-down injunctions from authoritative sources. On the contrary, it is the bottom-up involvement that begins with shared public conversation seem to play a decisive role. Those who are interested in knowing more about this project, you are most welcome to look into my book, which you just seen. It's called Cross-Cultural Conversation, A New Way of Learning. And the chapter 4 of this book especially deals with various aspects of our multi-religious situation. As I see it, the interfaith movement seeks to mobilize a collective political will with a view to removing hard boundaries that are created in the name of diverse religious identities, such as Hindu, Christian, Sikh, Muslim, etc., etc. This endeavor to promote an open conversation is undeniably important, especially since the urban settings around the globe are now increasingly becoming multi-religious in their demographic composition. As opposed to the hard boundaries mentioned earlier, which as a metaphor stands for barriers, obstacles, hindrances, soft boundaries enable us to highlight the distinctness of a tradition by distinguishing it from another. In other words, if soft boundaries help us to sustain religious diversity, the hard ones are often used with the intent to radicalize the we and they categories and to widen the gap between us and them in the social sphere of our collective existence. Isn't it gratifying for me to recall that several of the concept notes that I wrote as possible topics for cross-cultural conversation did indeed lead to international conferences in various parts of the globe. One of these became, to my delight, the basis for an event aimed at celebrating the 150th anniversary of Swami Vivekananda, birth anniversary. That was sponsored by the ICCR in 2013 in New Delhi. I coordinated this 2.5-day long international conference on the theme on world religions, diversity, not dissension. Some of you may recall these last two words, not dissension, are the last two words of the Chicago speech of Swami Vivekananda. Where I also at that time I had the opportunity in the final session to be in conversation with 4 spokespersons of 4 different religious traditions, such as His Holiness the Dalai Lama for Buddhism, the late Maulana Wahiduddin Khan for Islam, Reverend M4 Tutu, that is the daughter of Desmond Tutu, who represented Christianity, and Dr. Karan Singh for Hinduism. I also used the same title for the volume, and I think the book exists in the library here with the same title. It was published by Sage in 2014. I edited this collection of essays contributed by various speakers on that occasion. And in this connection, I cannot help recalling that Swami Bhajanananda of Ramakrishna Mission, Belur Math, who was one of the speakers, brought with him a new edition of a booklet entitled Tolerance or Acceptance, containing 2 of my talks that I delivered decades ago at the request of Swami Lokeshwaranandaji, and thereby rekindling very fond memories of my old association with the Ramakrishna Mission Institute of Culture, located in Golparka. It is my keen interest in the interfaith movement that took me to the Parliament of World Religions a few times, where I spoke in different sessions, along with several other colleagues, swamis, chaplains, and rabbis. I must say that in the beginning, I did not quite feel comfortable with the word faith, as in interfaith, but gradually got used to it. The English word faith sounded to me more or less like blind faith, where reason was virtually had no significant role to play. Perhaps this response comes naturally to those raised in any one of the Indic traditions, as to our ears, the appellation faith often sounds like a persuasion to accept ideas handed down by some authority where the process of critical scrutiny is to be automatically suppressed, and there is no room for facing the challenge of skepticism or consider the claims of any opposite convictions, the technical terms for which in our Upanishadic traditions are asambhavana buddhi and vipurita bhavana buddhi. With time, however, I became aware of the fact that most of us get born into one or another religious tradition, and very, very few of us actually get to choose it. Since choosing really implies a voluntary exiting from a tradition into which one is born. Religious traditions are like conceptual vehicles which have their own cultural moorings. Slowly, I learned to appreciate the fact that it was my familiarity with the Upanishadic tradition into which I was born, and that shaped my thinking, where intellection, manana, clears the path, enabling a seeker to attain deeper contemplation, nididhyasana, and prepares one for the dawning of a direct or non-mediated knowledge, aparakshanubhuti. But I also gradually opened up to the possibility that a different voice in a multi-religious forum might well be able to bridge the gaps between a seeker, a believer, and a seer in a way which could remove my present sense of discomfort. So today, while employing the phrase interfaith movement, I'm neither endorsing nor renouncing that nomenclature, but only following a standard conventional practice that has come to indicate a collective effort toward exploring the possibility for an authentic understanding among the religions of the world, which I hold to be of crucial importance. It is generally said that POWR, that is the Parliament of World Religions, inaugurated in Chicago in 1893, was the first attempt, at least in such a large scale, to bring diverse world religions together. We all know of the story of the huge impact of the presence of Swami Vivekananda during that inaugural meeting. I would briefly refer to his famous Chicago speech once again today, as I did when I spoke on this theme in Chicago this past August at the POWR 2023. Because he actually has provided us with a basic outline and some central insights that seem to me to be fully relevant for comprehending the trajectory of the interfaith movement in our time. Note that the second POWR also happened in Chicago, but only after 100 years later, that is in 1993. However, since then it has taken place in Cape Town in 1999, in Barcelona 2004, Melbourne 2009, Salt Lake City 2015, Toronto 2018, and virtually because of the COVID pandemic in 2021, and then the POWR held in Chicago in August this year. That is 130 years after it was inaugurated in that same city. This was the 9th convention, having 500 sessions. It attracted, so the report said, nearly 9,000 people from 95 countries and represented around 200 traditions. It is interesting that an endeavor to study closely the multi-religious situation in a global setting shows how palpably mistaken those futurists were, those who anticipate, those who predict what's going to happen in the future. And some of these people that I heard almost 3 decades ago, they were claiming then that with the common sharing of scientific knowledge and technology, and with the rise of humanistic ideologies, we would be soon living in a post-religious era. But today, on the contrary, we not only find that the religions of the world are vibrantly present, but also that the violence in the name of religious identities is still preponderant. It seems that we urgently need to promote interfaith movement and explore in collaboration the resources of our respective traditions for altering attitudes and innovating action plans so that members of different religious communities can coexist in harmony and peace, of which Swami Vivekananda spoke so ardently in 1893. Today, we do seem to need a serious collective commitment with the resolve to fulfill this task. This task I am inclined to describe as the unfinished project of Swami Vivekananda. Indeed, as we gathered in Chicago in August 2023, it was moving to recall that the interfaith movement truly gained a huge momentum when the Parliament of World Religions convened there for the first time in 1893, and that it was here that the inspiring voice of Swami Vivekananda, then a young and unknown Hindu monk, evoked spontaneous appreciation and reciprocations. I shared with the audience briefly just 3 remarks from his famous Chicago speech, not simply for the sake of honoring his memory on that occasion, but as I had just mentioned, because of their relevance for today's discussion on why the interfaith movement is crucially needed in our time. His comments, which quintessentially express the views of the tradition, of which he was then the spokesperson, lay out the basic features of the enterprise. He said, and when I'm telling you what he said, I'm using mostly his own words. He said, of all the forces that mold the destinies of the human race, none certainly is more potent than the manifestation of which we call religion. Let's note carefully that he's claiming religion to be the catalyst, the primary force for civilizational change. The second point from the same speech to which I would like to draw attention is that he also observed, in his own words, if the Parliament has shown anything to the world, it is that holiness, purity, and charity are not the exclusive possessions of any church in the world, and that every system has produced produced men of exalted character. He then continues to say how utterly pitiful it is when in the face of that evidence, if anybody dreams of the exclusive survival of his own religion and the destruction of others. Are you following? Am I speaking too fast?
No.
All right. It is very pertinent to notice that in the making of such a comment, he is not only declaring but legitimizing the presence of the plurality of religions, reminding his audience of the impropriety of any claim of exclusiveness in this regard. He's making it clear. And finally, at the very end of his speech, we find him expressing his own dream and calling out for the realization of that dream, proclaiming that upon the banner of every religion will soon be written, help and not fight, assimilation and not destruction, harmony and peace, not dissension. Here he is openly championing the cause of interfaith movement by laying bare the raison d'etre of every world religion. In other words, the sum and substance of these few comments that are pertinent for us to remember today consists, firstly, in the recognition of religion as a force that enables moral and spiritual transformation by motivating collective action for the betterment of all. Secondly, in the emphasis that such transformative powers have been exhibited by exemplary personalities from not just a single but multiple religious traditions. And finally, in urging that it is not enough that only one tradition or a few ones legitimates diversity while denouncing dissension, but that it must be so written, to repeat his own comment, on the banner of every religion. And there lies the challenge. Think of the global political scene of that time. Now 130 years ago, when these observations were made, imperialism and colonialism were still in full sway. The usual practice in the domain of theoretical discourse was, at best, to treat the presence of plurality of religions in a hierarchical fashion. Not much unlike the treatment received by the bearers of different religious identities in the social sphere. There were grades. Swami Vivekananda's dream conveys that the interfaith movement has the potency to fulfill the task of removing these asymmetries that keep tormenting humanity and allow various forms of social injustices and social conflicts to prevail. Obviously, the thrust of this optimism cannot really be appreciated if we treat our religious identity as it were no more than a casual form of social identity, only as a criterion for demarcating the world population into large aggregates as bearers of such identities, or are only willing to pay lip service to our respective traditions. Today, while discussing why interfaith movement is crucially needed in our time, if I am citing Swami Vivekananda, as I also did at the POWR 2023 in Chicago, it is only because I fully share the same conviction that an authentic success of the interfaith movement is bound to push human civilization to new heights. It can be expected that in such a scenario, a prediction that may well sound far-fetched since the project remains unfinished, that there would be a considerable reduction of that large part of human suffering which today is purposely man-made and even inflicted quite unabashedly in the name of religious differences. As it now stands, the picture does not seem to be very rosy. Some available reports of past religious riots show that heinous action plans are often designed and executed in conflict situations by playing on religious differences of the contending parties. In some cases, this may just be a tactic for distracting the public from the real issues, which are more often due to unresolved economic and political grievances than any ideological or doctrinal differences. Despite all our setbacks so far, my hunch is that if we could manage to gather the political will to engage in the interfaith movement, however fanciful it may sound, it may well bring about colossal changes in our present civilizational trajectory, since what these traditions seem to openly propagate is nonviolence, compassion, love that are totally lacking at institutional levels. However, such a venture entails creating an opportunity to explore in collaboration the significance of our respective religious identities by candidly asking a few questions in a multi-religious forum. If I may say so, by that, letting the hard boundaries of our present nation-state system of governance to interfere, not letting them to interfere, that because these more seek to divide us than unite humanity. We could ask, for example, some very general questions like, what kind of transformation do our religious traditions really demand from us, both on a personal level and a collective level? Do the religions of the world call for some alterations in the way we lead our lives? One significant way to know more about these traditions is to seek to comprehend their respective teachings about how to relate to other human beings, especially those who are not affiliated to the same tradition, to other sentient beings that are non-human, and to nature that provides us with our habitat. We could even investigate in an open conversational setting to which extent these traditions differ in their respective discernment of norms and values. I'm not worried if answers vary, since human experience shows that knowledge of real difference is much less dangerous than the imaginary differences between us and them. As I've said elsewhere, let us know where lie the differences and not just assume these, depending merely on hearsays. Generally, assumptions about the otherness of others often do lead us astray. However, we all know, at least I do, to my dismay, that such opportunities are scanty, really rare, in the general public domain, where persons from Hindu, Buddhist, Jewish, Christian, Jain, Sikh, Muslim, Baha'i, Zoroastrians, African and American indigenous, or from still other traditions that I did not even know existed. I got to know about so many other forms, groups of religious identities when I was in Chicago, which I've never even knew that these things existed, to get together and hear about the messages coded in all these religious discourses, let alone having an occasion to reflect and deliberate on the deeper implications of these teachings. We just have not managed to create that opportunity as yet. We lack even basic rudimentary information, since our educational as well as other public information channels do not provide us with what it takes to be more knowledgeable in this domain. This is perhaps largely so because it has not yet been fully recognized that such a pursuit is an important matter, not only for a handful of specialists, but also for the public, most of whom are bearers of a specific religious identity, an identity which is associated with one or another world religion. Also, let's not forget that many to these days consider their religious identity to be their primary identity. I've had many funny experiences when I have traveled. I remember once in Egypt, I was talking to a chef who was running a very popular restaurant. And I said, so you are primarily a cook, or you are primarily a man, or you are primarily a Muslim? He said, no doubt, I am first of all a Muslim. So these identities remain important, but we pretend as if these are secondary matters until we are faced with a crisis. Let us openly recognize, now that POWR has convened for the 9th time, that even though the interfaith movement had a great start, and the most important person was from this country, 130 years ago, it has not yet received adequate support to accomplish its objective. No doubt that the geopolitical landscape has vastly changed since that time. But nevertheless, it would hardly be any exaggeration to say that an authentic understanding of the significance of religious identity is perhaps more urgent now in our multi-religious societies across cultures than it was in 1893. And that is something that cannot be attained without the interfaith movement. Why am I saying this? Let me repeat what I said in the beginning. We are at present living in a worldwide political setting of nation-state system of governance, along with a common sharing of advanced scientific technology that has profound impact on various spheres of exchanges and transactions, be that social, economic, legal, political. We are witnessing an extraordinary mobility of people, goods, and ideas from one corner of the planet to another as never before. Consequently, we are learning to be receptive as well as appreciative of diversity in the domain of art, music, dance, food, and clothing. But oddly enough, we still seem to remain disconnected in the realm where the presence of the plurality of the religions is a reality to reckon with. We badly need to know what instructions have been given to the adherents of other world religions, at least the principal ones, about how to view this finite existence where we are all in transit. Had that knowledge been transmitted adequately, we would at least have a rich pool of resources in common. We can surely ask why that has not happened. And for this, let me read out to you just a few lines written by an American Catholic theologian called Brian Hayes, who made a very pertinent observation. He says, "There is an assumption that you do not have to understand religion in order to understand the world. You need to understand politics, strategy, economics, and law. But you do not need to understand religion. If you look at standard textbooks of international relations or the way we organize our foreign ministries, there is no place where a sophisticated understanding of a religion as a public force in the world is dealt with." End of quote. Given the current scenario, where if many nation states are increasingly becoming multi-religious in their demographic compositions, and especially so in their urban settings, and most of the principal world religions have also turned out to be transnational, since these are no longer confined to the land of their origin. So Hinduism is not confined only to India, and any other of the world religions, wherever may be their land of origin. And so all the nations, states you find that are becoming multi-religious in their compositions, the citizenries. And yet, we are not better informed about this matter. Given the current scenario, this is extremely strange. And not only that, we find that while the nation states regularly make enormous investments, both intellectual and economic, in order to strengthen the military paraphernalia, for augmenting their destructive capacities, for committing violence towards members of the same species in the name of national self-interest, self-defense, preemptive actions, etc., but are reluctant to use, by contrast, even a tiny fraction of our collective resources for empowering the interfaith movement. This is especially bizarre when we all know for a fact that it is still possible to provoke a clash among diverse religious communities and radicalize a sense of otherness among them. The importance of interfaith movement cannot be underestimated if we are to eradicate the possibility of viewing a group of individuals through a single identity lens. And what does that mean? That is when we describe a group of people only in terms of their religious identity and ignore all other shared identities, social identities, and if we are to prevent the abuse of religious identities, we have to do this. Given that fanaticism and fundamentalism can and do still cause grave social disruptions, it's time to mobilize political will for innovating new ways of thinking in the context of religions, diversity, as well as for stopping erosion of values so that these may no longer be manipulated for dubious and divisive purposes. All the time religious identities you will find getting manipulated that way. A review of historical records of religious riots in recent past between members of different religions or two denominations of the same religion shows that even when the contending parties in a conflict situation are of the same ethnicity and speak the same language, they still inflict enormous suffering on each other in the name of religious differences, ignoring all that is shared. We Bengalis know that. We need to be particularly watchful since any such ploy today can be simply disastrous for any multi-religious society. Open conversation in a multi-religious setting can provide an opportunity for a deeper understanding of our shared human predicament and benefiting from the insights and instructions that are available from diverse traditional sources. A collective effort to promote the interfaith movement, even simply with the intention just to critically consider the relevance of these age-old teachings that have come down to us now living in the 21st century, would raise our awareness about the role that the religions of the world actually play both in our personal and collective lives. The participants are likely to find that these are the sources from which most people draw their norms and values for guiding their lives here and now. And also, they turn to these same sources whilst they seek answers to their ultimate whither and whence questions. You know, that means where have we all come from? Where are we heading to? There are no other sources, no other discourse available but these. It is virtually impossible not to recognize that religious traditions remain to this day our principal wisdom traditions. Well, we know that the Hindu tradition celebrates diversity. We do not come across any suggestion in the mainstream discourse, I'm not talking about current political things, to discard or delegitimize any tradition, nor any recommendation for arranging different traditions in an ascending hierarchical order. The oft-cited saying, as many views, so many paths, an utterance by the 19th century saint Sri Ramakrishna, is in full consonance with the statement found in the oldest document of the Indo-European literature, the Rig Veda Samhita, that says, reality is one, the wise call it by different names. This remarkable insight, which has permeated the Indian cultural soil from time immemorial, makes all claims of exclusivism redundant. The instruction embedded in the ethos of the Hindu world is to cultivate an attitude of respect toward those traditions which diverse communities follow as parallel paths to which they are affiliated, even if we are not. The message implies that it is wrong to impose one's own path on the others and coerce others to live their own path, which they actually follow. Let us note that these teachings are not merely of interest for construing a theoretical framework on religious diversity, but these readings do have very serious practical consequences. Unquestionably, it is because of this attitude India is not only the home for the adherents of major traditions, as well as of innumerable minor sects of Indic origin, but has also been the place of refuge for many religious communities who escaped from their original habitat for various reasons, such as the Parsi Zoroastrians, the Jews in earlier times, and more recently, the Tibetan Buddhists and the Baha'is. No doubt that a genuine interfaith movement or an encounter would enable us to perceive that the religious dimension of human consciousness knows of myriads of expressions. There is no question that critical queries will abundantly emerge in such a conversational setting, and we have to allow for debates and discussions to continue to take place. Hopefully, this would give rise to some conceptual clarity in this very intricate, difficult area of investigation. And we would begin to perceive that the problems that we now confront cannot be resolved via the practice of sectarianism, bigotry, or fanaticism, with reference to which Swami Vivekananda said that had it not been for these horrible demons, human society would have been far more advanced than it is now. It would lead to the next level. An open space for public conversation is critically necessary, I think, both for understanding not only other traditions, but also for deepening our own self-understanding about our own tradition. You might know that today there are many questions with regard to the Hindu attitude towards the plurality of religions. And these questions are raised not only by non-Hindus, but many Hindus themselves are questioning this. And one typical example, I will just give just one example, is that it's often asked that this Hindu attitude that grants legitimacy to multiple traditions, which declines to organize these multiple traditions in a hierarchical order, does this imply that for the Hindus, all religions are the same? This question, I don't know, I've heard how many times. I venture to answer the question by saying that the Hindu acceptance of religious diversity is not for the sake of creating harmony by denying differences, but rather it is an attitude which fiercely protects a seeker's freedom to follow a preferred path that suits his or her spiritual makeup. The point is to learn to respect the essential purpose of the quest embodied in the multiple traditions, despite all their variations. To make this point, I once asked an interlocutor, do you know of any world religion? Think even of the most rigorously organized ones that does not know of denominations, of inner divergences. Why do these differences at all arise? Why we must allow for differences? It's indeed commonplace in the Hindu tradition, of course, to say, Bhinna ruchirhi lokaha. People are of different tastes, and this reading is understood not only in the context of mundane affairs, such as when we exhibit preferences for certain kinds of food or clothes, but also holds true in the spiritual domain. And this is why within the Hindu tradition itself, we find that there are many options available for any seeker. A seeker may follow the path of knowledge or devotion or action or any combination of any of these. Well, this is one way that conversations continue, exchange of insights and ideas begin to take place. It is crucial today that we make an honest effort to delve into the depth of our religious identities that seem to be often much abused. And we have to be very careful about this while living in a multi-religious society, and appreciate the importance of empowering the interfaith movement in the backdrop of the complex web of our transitory lives. I sometimes think the world religions are like lighthouses, resembling the lighthouses that guide the sailors while sailing in an open sea in darkness. The religions of the world offer us a sense of direction as we struggle to navigate this inescapable ocean of death-bound existence. And thank you so much for listening to me for such a long time. And now I will be happy to hear your comments, but if you have questions, I'm very happy that Swami Shupananda Ji is there to answer.
Time is up.
That's good.
So do you have any question? I think you don't have. I don't know how to thank Professor Anindita Balslev for her beautiful exposition of the necessity of holding interfaith discussions. She has profusely quoted from Swamiji or ideas of Swamiji and Sri Ramakrishna himself. I appreciate very much, and you too, I know. But the real issue is who is to do that job. We can have discussions galore. It is one thing to discuss in the public meetings. It is quite a different thing to convince the priests of every faith to follow his faith so sincerely that those faiths do not have any clash with the faiths of others. So that is what is intended, that you hold on to your own faith. That steadfast devotion to your own faith, it is required. And at the same time, you have to accept that other faiths are necessary for other people. That is what Sri Ramakrishna taught. All faiths are not equal in that sense that you will have to go and accept that and take up and live your life, rejecting your own faith. Not that. Nobody has demanded. But now the question is that even at the theoretical level, we do not feel encouraged to say even this, that you have to give up the concept of sin and sinfulness. If you hold on to that very idea, teenage, that you are a born sinner, then why do you try to live a life of religion, so to say? You will remain a sinner if it is an innate nature of yours. Nor you have no right or no courage to say to the followers of Islam that you can better appreciate your religion if you go back to the religious path shown by Sufism as such. Only at the Sufistic level, Islam has a right place to declare itself a universal faith. Similarly, if Christianity gives us this concept of sin and sinfulness and accept that human life is divine, essentially divine, and sin and other things that we commit, these are all externals to us, and they will go away when you get to the truth. These are all external factors. It is not innate. So that is the issue. That is the main problem. You cannot solve it through discussions. And what Sri Ramakrishna did, Sri Ramakrishna didn't preach any philosophy of his own, but he preached the oneness of Hinduism, Vedanta as such, and so many differences are there to suit the temperaments and the efficiency acquired by the protagonist of that or those religions. This is a fact. He didn't ask anybody to change his religious views. He rather substantiated the other faiths vigorously and with emphasis. Sri Ramakrishna did that. That extraordinary orthodoxy and bigotry, fanaticism, these were the only glanis, pitfalls of religion. These were the only glanis. Only. Sri Ramakrishna came to remove those defects and established a religion of harmony. Harmonious. Sister Anindita Didi was declining the concept of harmony. Now, harmony is a must. Harmony is a must. All the religions would have to become universal. Hinduism has its own glory. It is in a way, Hinduism is in a way, claims to be the best among all religious faiths because it first discovered the truth is one, the universal faith, Vedanta. And those who take to Vedanta, they are always in conflict with the other faiths, other branches of Hinduism, you know. The Vaishnavism, Shaivism, Tantra, this and that, innumerable faiths people inculcate. All the gurus, they have formed their own sects also. So innumerable faiths we have, but all are to be harmonized in Vedanta. And what is that? Swamiji says, I want to worship the Lord in human body. Yes. Life itself is divine. And even the material world, even a piece of sand, however small, it has behind it that infinite consciousness. It does not exist in space in its ultimate state. So both the material world and the living world, they are one and the same. So everything is divine. Everything is divine. That outlook directly comes from Vedanta and Vedanta only. That's why Swamiji says, I want to propagate a religion that will be equally acceptable to all minds. It may be equally philosophic, equally emotional, equally mystic, and equally conducive to action. So he was in search of the area common to all, where to sit and start our dialogue. So it is not easy. I tell you, Didi, it is not easy to sit together in a platform and speak out the necessity of a pluralistic religion. They won't accept. You have to point out why you can see it. Why you can see it. So there is always a common element, or an element common to all faiths. You have to discover that. And Swamiji did that. What was that? It is purity. It is purity. It is sacredness of individual personality. Every person is sacred. You, a Muslim, you have divinity within. You are going to the mosque in order to find out that truth in you. You do not go to the mosque and pray, oh Allah or oh Muhammad. You have become, you made me a rogue, a killer, a dacoit. No. We pray, you pray, Lord, oh God, you are pure. You are saintly, make me that. You go to the church, and what do you pray? You pray for purity. You are pure. Make me pure. That's the idea. Each and every one of us essentially live in divinity, which exists beyond our physical body, beyond our mind, beyond our intellect. The people who discuss these points, they do not have faith in their divine status, divine existence. Sattam Jnanam Anantam Brahma Ananda Rupam Jad Vibhati. They do not understand. This Brahman, this Atman, this divine nature of ours, they do not understand. But they give lectures, full-blooded lectures they give on religion, based on physical body, where there are differences, all are different here. They accept mind and at best intellect. They go up to intellect at best. Intellectual acumen, we know. But religious faith, religious life is quite a different concept. You have to crush the barriers of body, mind, and intellect. You have to be lost in spirit, in divinity, in purity. And you can do that through work unselfishly in the outside world, and inwardly through meditation. If you are unselfish, if you can make your work pure, you will acquire a pure mind. And with pure mind, you will landed onto the area of pure buddhi, which never fails to guide you towards the goal. And then beyond this buddhi is Suddha Atma. That is the state of samadhi. So Sri Ramakrishna had this karma suddhi, and he had that constant union with the divine. For that you do not have to sit cross-legged. When you are dancing and suddenly you are lost in consciousness. You have noted Sri Ramakrishna while dancing, even standing, he was found lost in samadhi. Samadhi means living with consciousness itself. That every one of us can have that experience if you can make your work not an instrument of exploitation, but you look upon it as service. As mothers are serving their children in the family, they are not doing their duties there. But when that very working mother, when she moves on to the place of work, she has been doing, she seemed to be doing duty. Duty is not very pleasant thing. Duty is always very, very bad to perform. So make it a service by adding love to duty. As you do practice, or as you do automatically in your family. And Swamiji has given us, one or two minutes more, Swamiji has given us the blueprint of the universal faith. So Hinduism is great, Vedanta, that is Vedanta, it is great because it has found, it is the first religion that experienced the oneness of existence, universal faith. But Swamiji says, every religion has the capability of becoming a universal faith. Every religion. Jesus didn't preach sin. Swamiji says it is his disciples who misunderstood him. Islam is all very nice with Sufism. Buddhism, there is no conflict with Buddhism. Jainism. They all come from Hinduism proper, Vedanta proper. So what else remains? Nothing. So each soul is potentially divine. There are 4 principles delineated by Swamiji for a universal religion to come up from each and every religious faith. They have to have faith in the divinity of all protagonists, or all followers of that religion. So you are there with this assumption that divinity, or when you go to sleep, you are in your divine state. Those who go to sleep, in sleep you attain that real state of yours, real nature. You are one with your real nature in sleep, one thing. The goal is to manifest this divinity within by controlling nature, external by science, and internal by religion. So science and religion both will come together, that I just discussed earlier. Matter is also divine. To prove that you are proceeding towards the same goal, right track, on the right track. And do this either by work or by worship or by philosophy or by intuition, this and that. by one or two or all, by all of this, and be free. And this is all that you can say about religion. This is the whole of religion. The dogmas, the temples, churches, books, these are for secondary details. These are not absolutely unnecessary, but their role is to prepare the kernel inside. Just like a green mango, if you peel off the skin while it is green, you won't get the big, ripe, juicy mango. You won't get. The skin will protect. The church, temples, these are the protecting mechanisms. So you have no right to ridicule even all these religious performances. Rituals are there. It would protect the tender plant. That's why Swamiji says it is good to be born in a church, but it is very, 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 very bad to die there. You have to come out of the area of the church. So this is it. Who listen to this? You have to prepare your inner life. And you don't have to preach. Those who came to Sri Ramakrishna, they had this feeling. Sri Ramakrishna was a man of realization. He realized all faiths in his not in his 50 years of life, this very limited span of his life. He did have all the religious faiths lived and preached. And there was not a single enemy of Sri Ramakrishna. He was very frank and free with any of the, say, followers of any religious faith. They used to feel that he belongs to us. That sort of transformation. And Swamiji, wherever Swamiji went, Swamiji preached this faith. And he didn't preach through words, through his own life. They used to feel that here is Christ himself present before them. In Thousand Island Park when he visited, and his disciples were coming from 200 kilometers in a stormy night. Swamiji became wonderstruck. Oh, so much of trouble you took to come to me? Well, yes. If Jesus was alive, we would have to come to him this way. We see no difference between you and Jesus. And rightly it was so. Anyway, we are thankful to Anindita ji for a beautiful exposition, and you have invoked so many ideas, we remember, and I thank Dr. R.P. Singh Sengupta, the eminent neurosurgeon of UK and India, that he started this Shantanu Sengupta endowment in memory of his son. I thank you. All too little audiences present in this hall tonight. Thank you all. Namaste.